The first scene of the film focuses on a lady called Sarah, as she is washing the blood off of her body in the shower. We are then told her story and how she ended up in this condition. The next scene takes us to the past. Sarah is in a grocery store with her two kids, Lucy and Ben, who is nonverbal ever since witnessing a traumatic event. At the store, one of the workers comes up to her, and always acts as if he cares about her. Here we learn that Sarah is a single mother with a low-income background, as she is short on money to pay for groceries. After noticing the employee observing her from a distance, she cancels a few items on the list. As the three take a stroll home, we are introduced to a new character, Tito, a low-level drug dealer, who sneakily watches a couple of mobsters named Terry and Mackers, as they deal drugs on the street. The following day, Sarah stops by the police station to ask if there's an update regarding the investigation of her husband's murder. That's right, Sarah's husband was murdered, and her son Ben was the lone eyewitness, hence, he's been unable to speak ever since. Sadly, the police doesn't have any new leads on the case yet, and asks her to let it go. With a heavy heart, she visits her mother, who suggests that Sarah and the kids should move in, because she knows Sarah is struggling financially after her husband's tragic passing, but Sarah declines this offer. The next place the three visit is her husband's grave, which looks brand new, meaning that her husband's murder took place very recently. Sarah takes her children's hands and looks at the grave with tears rolling down her cheeks. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Tito the drug dealer steals a car. He then takes the car at full speed and purposely crashes into the back of Terry and Macker's car. Afterwards, he steals a plastic bag from the trunk and takes off, while Terry and Mackers go after him. As this happens, Sarah and her kids are walking back to their apartment, when Tito suddenly slips inside to hide from Terry and Mackers, scaring the small family. However, Tito ignores them and watches the window until coast is clear. He then casually uses the bathroom before facing Sarah, telling her not to tell anyone of his presence and making his exit. After their search come up empty-handed, Terry and Mackers report about the theft to their boss, Leo Miller, who is obviously furious to learn what just happened. As it turns out, Tito is not done with Sarah, as he comes back to her place later that night and threatens to smash her window if she doesn't let him in. He then takes the drugs out of a hidden compartment in her bathtub and gives her 40% of the money he got. After selling some of them, the man exclaims that Sarah's house is the ideal spot for him to sell narcotics for the next 5 days, since no one would ever search for him in a suburban mom's house. Sarah tries to get him to go, saying she doesn't want to be involved, but he refuses and threatens to murder her if she doesn't. Aside from the whole Tito ordeal, Sarah is still determined to figure out who killed her husband. Because the police are unwilling to help, she goes to the park where her husband was murdered and pleads for her son, Ben, to tell her what he saw that night. However, Ben is still unable to say a word. That evening, Tito returns to Sarah's place with some food and money from some of the drugs he sold today. He gives Sarah a cut as promised, but she refuses to take any. Regardless, he makes himself at home anyway, and starts vaping in her living room while watching TV, resigning to the fact that she just has to live with Tito for the next few days. Sarah sits near him and tries asking him if he knew her husband by any chance, or any details regarding his murder. Tito sympathizes with her, but tells her he doesn't know him when she showed him a family picture. However, after learning the husband's name, Tito reveals he heard that the guy was a drug dealer in town, and probably got killed for it. This offends Sarah, who refuses to admit that her late husband could be a drug dealer, but Tito is adamant about this. On the next day, Sarah is on another grocery run, when the employee from earlier notices Sarah doing a lot of shopping. The man suddenly asks her how much she charges, implying she must be earning it the easy way. This shocks her and she immediately leaves the premises. Once back at home, Sarah enjoys a great carefree day with her children. They enjoy a great meal, watch movies and play together. Later on, Sarah notices that the drugs are missing from the bathroom. To make matters worse, when she enters a room, she discovers that Ben has found the drug stash and is toying with it. She panics and takes the drugs out of his hand, before cleaning him up. That night, when Tito arrives, he breaks the glass on her door and gets inside. Before anything bad happens, Sarah closes the door to her children's bedroom and goes out to him. Tito notices that the drugs are missing and sees them on the ground where Ben had put them. Scared, Sarah starts apologizing, saying she will pay for his loss, but he gets angry and grabs her by the throat. He demands for Sarah to have sex with him to pay for what happened. Sarah pretends to comply, but immediately hits him in the eye with a vibrator when she gets the chance. Enraged, he pins her to the wall while choking her, which forces her to pick up a knife from the table and stab him in the gut. The bad guy lays dying on the floor, right when Sarah's kids start pounding on her bedroom door, asking what's up, and so Sarah pretends everything is fine and sends them off. When she returns to the bedroom, Tito is already dead. Unfortunately for her, things are about to get worse as a couple of police officers come knocking on the door. Apparently, they received a call from a neighbor regarding some noise disturbance and have come to check what's going on. Upon finding an alcoholic beverage in the messy kitchen, they conclude that Sarah must simply be dating an abusive alcoholic and advises her to get herself together. She doesn't report anything to the police, and after the officers leave, Sarah thinks about where to hide the dead body. She finally decides to go to her mother the next day and leave her kids at her mother's place for the time being. At the same time, the mob boss, Leo Miller, is out and about trying to find Tito and has captured a couple of Tito's acquaintances for questioning. When they swear that they don't know where Tito is, he smashes one of them in the knee with a hammer and violently beats the other to death. Meanwhile, Sarah goes shopping for a few tools, including an axe and a handsaw. When she returns home, she covers her entire bedroom with tarp and executes her grand plan. She begins with undressing the dead body, during which process she finds a handgun. Afterwards, she hesitantly starts chopping Tito to pieces. She throws up during the nasty process, but eventually manages to mutilate and put his body parts in several plastic bags. After completing the assignment, she does a major cleanup job. And here we return to the shower scene in the beginning of the movie. Sarah, covered in blood, washes the blood off of her face and body. Later that day, she picks her kids up and take them to the doctor, because Ben has a psychologist appointment for his speech problems. Conveniently, the mob boss, Leo Miller, is in the same building, getting his knuckles treated after punching the glass frame earlier in the movie. After the appointment, the psychologist tells Sarah that Ben hasn't been speaking because he's traumatized after witnessing his father get murdered, and will speak once he's ready. The small family then begin to head out, while at the same time Leo Miller exits the elevator. Adding to the problem, Lucy keeps saying the name Tito, which doesn't go unheard by the mob boss. Though Sarah repeatedly tells her not to, Lucy keeps repeating it. As a result, the gangster follows them home to figure out where Sarah lives, but doesn't attack for now. That night after she tucks her kids in, Sarah goes around the neighborhood to dump Tito's body parts in various garbage bins all over the neighborhood. The day after, while watching her trash get picked up, Sarah notices the gangster's car parked outside her house. Unfortunately, the mobsters manage to find her later and start to corner Sarah and her kids. But just before they take her away, Ben runs to the street and stops a garbage truck, prompting the workers to come over. Sensing something's wrong, the bin guys offer to go up against them to protect Sarah. The gangsters are now busy with the men and start beating them up for their interference. This gives Sarah the opportunity to run for her life, and it's also when Ben confirms that Leo was the one who killed his father. Sarah then seeks refuge in her mother's home later that night, and she promises Ben that she will never let the gangster hurt them. Ben finally says his first word ever since the day his father died, which puts a smile on her face. But to her surprise, when she steps downstairs, she finds Leo Miller there, who has snuck in and is now demanding to know where Tito is. And so, Sarah promises to bring Tito to him in an hour. When she returns home, she finds her entire place already ransacked by none other than Tito's men, and sees a plastic bag remains untouched. She goes ahead and dresses up, before heading to the pub that Leo Miller owns downtown. Once she arrives, Mackers roughly escorts her to the basement room for an audience with the mob boss. The boss asks about Tito, so she tells them to open up her bag. Here Sarah finally takes out Tito's head to show them, causing the boss to laugh, while the other gangsters step away from her, calling her a psycho. But that's not all Sarah's here for. She mentions her husband's name to ask if these mobsters knew him. Realizing she has come for revenge, the boss stops laughing and gives his men the signal to end her life. And so, Sarah takes the gun out of Tito's head and shoots Mackers and Terry down, before putting a bullet in Leo Miller's shoulder, severely injuring him. With a bullet held to his head, she asks him why he killed her husband. Here Leo reveals with Contempt that her husband wasn't a drug dealer, he was a random passerby at the park, who tried to play the nice guy, and interfered when Leo was about to kill someone who owed him money. The boss reaches for a gun to shoot Sarah, but she's faster, she shoots him in the head. As Sarah is about to leave, one of the gangsters starts groaning. So she finishes him off with a blow of a hammer to his head. She then takes the CCTV tape, and later, the murders are dismissed as gang-related violence. The movie ends with Sarah resuming her life as a single mother, who feels at peace after resolving her husband's murder case. The nosy employee approaches her again, and informs her that she must be getting paid well, and then hints he wants to be a client as well. In response, Sarah tells Ben to grab a chocolate bar from the shelf, and gives the wrapper to the employee, saying if he doesn't pay for it, she will go straight to management and tell them that he flashed his privates in front of her children.